any question you want.
And thank you for coming on to the YouTube
Sarah
channel
is
today.
hopefully an open
This
book.
video is going to
So
be a tour of a
just
100
find
unit
out
apartment
how she
building,
did this,
and
why
I'm
she did
excited
this,
for
what's
what
going
you'll be able
on,
to
and how
learn
she's going to
with
make money.
this tour of the
But
100
your
unit
own
apartment building my
questions to
friend
get there.
Sarah made.
Again, come and grab
All right,
food.
so
If you don't
we're
have
going to learn
food, you're in
everything,
huge
how
trouble.
she made the money, how she
And there
underwrote
is
the deal,
vegetables,
how she's
so
going to make the
there's
rest of the
something
money,
for
how she
vegans,
even
there's
funded
something
it
for
because she had to
everybody.
raise millions
So
of
come
dollars
and
in
eat, and then we'll
capital
get started
just to fund this deal. So without further ado, let's get into the tour of this 100 unit apartment building, and let's learn something today.
But with that said, let's go ahead and talk about this this property. Was there anybody? We had about 90 people in October, 93 people back in October tour this same unit right after Sarah closed on it. Who was with us that day? Not too many. Okay, cool. Well, there's a lot of things that have happened over the last year or so since they closed, and so please, we'll just turn it over to Sarah.
Can you guys all hear me if I talk about this loud? Or is that too loud? Louder? Okay. I'll try to project my voice. So just a little housekeeping stuff first before we get started. If anyone needs a restroom, the orange door on the right up the sidewalk is restrooms. Other than that, I'm really happy you guys are all here. Thanks so much for coming out. Thank you to Adam and Blue Spruce for putting together this event and letting me share with all of you what our company's been able to do with this property, and hopefully you'll learn a thing or two today. So I'll just go ahead and talk a little bit about myself, about the property, and if you have questions while I'm talking, feel free. This is all for you, and I want to make sure your questions are answered. We'll also have Q&A at the end, so just I'm thinking we'll tour around 1 o'clock, so we'll have about 40 minutes here. We'll finish up with the tour, and then people can stay and network and then leave as you need to. So a little bit about myself. I'm from Colorado originally. I'm a native, grew up in Arvada, and graduated from CSU and CU. And like many of you guys, I had a typical, middle-class upbringing, learned about, a penny saved is a penny earned, money doesn't grow on trees. And in college, I got exposed to the idea of passive income. I read the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book that many real estate investors have read and said, this is something I've never heard about in my life. So that started my journey in real estate. About 7 or 8 years ago, my husband and I started buying smaller multifamily properties. We didn't syndicate them, we just purchased them on our own. And that did really well for us until we said, it'd be nice to go bigger and help more people. We had lots of people interested in real estate, and it was hard for them to take the first step. So I heard about this idea of syndication, which is just getting a group of people together who all want the same thing, in this case being to buy apartment buildings. And started our syndication company about 3 years ago. This is our current acquisition that we have in Colorado. We're looking for another property soon. But it's been an exciting journey, and I love real estate. For people who are newer, real estate is one of the only asset classes where you get cash flow every month. Your tenants are, going to work every day, making money, and they're giving you a large chunk of their paycheck to pay their rent. And you're leveraging those people's efforts. You're providing them a nice place to stay, and you get the cash flow every month. You also get the benefit of appreciation. Hot markets, especially like Denver, have appreciated exponentially the last 5 years or so. That's another benefit of real estate. You also have your mortgage pay down. The tenants are paying that, not you. So you're making additional equity over time. And then there's lots of tax benefits with real estate as well. So, if you're brand new to real estate, that's just kind of a summary of the benefits why you might want to be in real estate. I'll talk more about why I think multifamily investing is the best asset class to be in at that event that Adam was just mentioning. But just a couple tidbits on it. I would say for me, it's risk mitigation. I really like multifamily because people always need a place to live, and you're less exposed to an economic downturn in the multifamily space. So that's one of the big ones for me. And then also economies of scale. You can have 100 doors under one roof. There's one property manager that can manage it. There's one contractor that can, do your projects for you. And there's only one set of books that you have to audit every year. So those are some of the takeaways. I'll talk a lot more in depth about those and some other reasons why I love multifamily. So Adam asked me to talk about why Colorado is a great place to invest. I love Colorado. Like I said, I'm a native here, grew up here, love the outdoors, and it's not just me that loves all those things. There's a lot of people moving to Colorado, and the quality of life is excellent. So population growth is my number one reason why I love Colorado as a place to invest. The more people that come here, the more people need a place to stay. And just with current, what's the word I'm looking for, demographic shifts, people don't necessarily want to be homeowners anymore. So there's a high demand for apartment rentals. And Colorado is just growing so fast. I want to say there were, 1.85% growth rate in 2016. And that's the latest data I was able to find. That makes it the fastest growing major metropolitan area in the country. So let that sink in for a little bit. People want to be here, and there's going to be demand for apartments for a long time to come. So that was my number one reason why Colorado is still a great place to invest. I mentioned, the great climate, although it's a little hot today. Millennials want to be here. So I couldn't find the number for Denver, but the Colorado Springs, surprisingly, is the number one fastest growing city for millennials in the country. So that was another great reason why you might want to be investing in Colorado Springs. And if anybody didn't see the U.S. World and News report that just came out recently, Colorado Springs was ranked number 2 in the country as the best places to live. Austin was number 1, unfortunately, and Denver was number 3. So in the whole country, we are getting national attention for being a great place to live. It's going to bring more people here and more demand for apartments. Job growth. Job growth is another reason why Colorado is a great place to invest. I mean, for all the reasons I just said, people are moving here. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country, 2.9%. And we're ranked, according to one of the rating services, the second best economy for jobs in the whole country. And 73,000 jobs were added last year just in Colorado. So the economy is booming. I don't know if you've talked to any, people who have to hire people right now, but everybody's employed. It's hard to find labor. Construction industry too, costs are going up due to that, but that's great because everybody's employed and they have money to spend and money to live in apartments. And Colorado, another interesting thing, wage growth has been 4.6% in the last 12 months, which again is really a good news for this market because prices have gone up and people keep saying, apartments are going to become unaffordable at some point. And with wage growth, there's a longer runway for the economy to keep growing and rents to keep increasing. So number 3 reason why I like investing in Colorado is the familiarity aspect and ease of access. I could have separated those into 2, but familiarity, I've driven all these highways hundreds of times before. I know which neighborhoods are good neighborhoods. That would be a good investment. I know which neighborhoods are not a good place to be. And for me, that's peace of mind for me and also peace of mind for investors. Like I said, we have 50 people who are investing their money in this property. And I want to make sure that I know the market, I know the area, and I can come by here anytime if there's a problem. It's 20-minute drive from my house. I don't have to jump on an airplane. I love being here close by to check up on things. And another thing is it's a primary market now. Some will say it's a primary market, some will say it's a tertiary market. And most people will say, what does that matter? But the reason that matters is you get exceptional financing terms from all the major lenders when you're in a primary or secondary market. Higher loan to value, so the bank will give you more money of your purchase price, lower interest rates, and they'll give you what's called interest only, which means you're only paying interest payments for the first 1 to 5 years on the loan. And that will help your cash flow in the early years while you're implementing your business plan. So far we had population growth, job growth, familiarity and ease of access, and then a primary market.
Didn't you pay cash for this?
Say again?
Didn't you pay cash for this? Oh, I thought you had 50 investors to pay cash.
Well, so the investors are paying the down payment. So we raised money for the down payment, the capital improvements that we wanted to make on the property, closing costs, and then this general category called working capital. So that's your buffer. If something goes wrong, if you need to replace a roof or a boiler. So we raised all that money up front from our investors, and then it sits in a bank account until we renovate the unit interiors. We have to, repaint a unit or the exterior, or we want to fix up the office. So those sort of things. So that's where we raised the money from. But we got a Fannie Mae loan, which is one of the government-sponsored loans with the best terms, for 80% of the purchase price is what the bank put in. Go ahead.
Question. Your working capital, how did you calculate how much that should be?
I forget the question was, how do you calculate your working capital? And I don't know the exact formula, but it's about 2 months worth of expenses and interest payments. Yeah.
Do you take money out of the rents every month to keep putting back into the working capital?
Yeah, so the question was, do we take money out of rents every month to go into working capital? And it's actually a lender requirement for these bigger properties to have what they call repair reserve account. So for this property, it's $250 per unit per year that gets put aside into working capital. And that's money that the lender holds in an escrow account on behalf of the property. So when we do need to replace a boiler or a roof or some appliances, we can ask the lender for reimbursement, and they'll pay us that money back. So it's not $250 a year per unit expense necessarily, but the lender does set that aside.
Is that enough to cover it?
It depends. It depends. This property is pretty stabilized, so it has been enough. But if you had a major expense like a roof replacement, you'd have to come out of pocket for a repair like that. So that's why we have an additional working capital account besides the one the lender makes us have. Okay, I'll keep going on my why I love Colorado to invest. So Marcus and Millichap, they're a big commercial brokerage in town. They put out these quarterly reports on the market, and they did a survey of all the major metros, like top 100 metros in the country, and calculated appreciation for the past 5 years and cap rates for the past 5 years. And the interesting thing to note was Denver was the highest appreciating market the past 5 years, and it had an above average cap rate. So what that means is prices actually are lower here than the rest of the nation, and appreciation has been higher. And granted, past performance does not guarantee future results, but I love that I love that trend, right? Like, we're getting good value and we're in an appreciating market, and you can still cash flow, which is another thing. I would recommend only buying properties that cash flow from day one. You want to add value over time, but I like knowing that there's going to be money coming into the bank account every month from the time we close.
What is that cap rate?
I think it's around 5.5 on average across asset classes. And Then the other thing so number 6, I said value add strategy is very appealing in Colorado. And what I mean by that is you can find a property like this property. It was built in 1974. Very few unit interiors had been upgraded. And as part of our business plan, we said, okay, we'll buy this property. We'll spend, $6,000 or $7,000 per unit to put in the new cabinets, new flooring, new paint and fixtures. And people are willing to pay an extra $100 a month for a nice updated unit. And they're like, okay, that's nice, $100 a month. But the big thing that works in our favor for value add strategies here is the cap rate. Because cap rates are so low, you actually add more value to your property doing a value add in Denver than, say, like Oklahoma City, where cap rates are 8 or 9% still. So, just cap rates, if anybody's new, that's just a measure of how you would price an apartment building. The lower the cap rate, the higher the value. So in Colorado, I'll just say a 6% cap rate for easy numbers. It's actually lower than that. But if I add $1 in income by, renovating interiors or whatnot, I actually increase the value of the property by almost $17. So take that, on a much larger scale, $1,000 in income increase gets you $17,000 in additional value for your property. Whereas if you were in a 10 cap market, which I don't think those exist anymore, but if you add $1 of value to your property, you're only getting $10 in additional, $1 in income, you get $10 in value for the property. So
$1 annual.
$1 annual, yeah. Yep. And then I'll throw a bonus one in. So number 7, Denver has proven to be somewhat recession-proof. We didn't get hit nearly as hard as some other markets in the last recession. So I like that. I know Phoenix and some of the Florida markets are really hot right now, but they got hit hard in the last recession. And Denver really, we had a dip for sure, but wasn't as bad as other places have seen. So just to summarize, population growth, job growth, familiarity, ease of access, primary market, cap rates above the national average. The value add strategy works really well here, and it's somewhat recession proof. So, Adam.
Yep.
Tons of details. How was that? Questions?
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah. Who has a question about that? Okay. So 1, 2, 3. So 1.
Yeah. So how did you stress test the financials? I mean, everyone's talking about potential downturn and whatnot. So how did you stress test it to make sure it works?
Yeah. So the question was, how did we stress test the financials? And we did an analysis to determine how much vacancy we could withstand to still, pay our expenses every month. And the interesting thing about properties like this are your income is a lot higher than your expenses. So we were able to have, I think, 40% economic vacancy and still pay the bills. So that made us feel really good about the property.
Crazy. Okay, so we got 2. You're number 2. He's number 3, 4.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the syndication process? How you found your investors?
Yes.
You first went to a lawyer, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I can talk all about that. I have a whole nother, a lot more I want to talk about syndication. So I can just lead into that if there are any other questions about Colorado as a market.
Okay, so we'll come right back to that. You had one, Mike?
Yeah, so how did you find the property? Did you go to a LoopNet? Did you go to a broker?
Sure. So we found the property through a traditional method. We have a network of brokers that we know, and the property was listed through ARA, a local brokerage here, and we went through the competitive bidding process. I think there were 15 offers on the property, but what worked in our favor was they actually took it off the market after that process, and 6 months later decided to sell, and so they came back to us and asked us if we wanted to make an offer. So we essentially got it off market at that point in time.
Right here? Oh,
I was going to say, so did it still meet your cap rate goals even at 40%, or was it just covering your bills?
Just covering the bills.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something about putting your business plan into place.
Yes.
What is the business plan, or is that something you
I will.
about later?
I can talk about that now.
Talking about the business plan and how it got into place, and you were saying.
Yeah. So I can just talk a little bit more about this specific property. So the question was into place. So the reason this property checked all the boxes was it was a value add property, which means we could come in, do some renovations, add some additional income sources, and increase the net operating income of the property. And by doing that, you're adding value. That was the discussion about cap rates and how if you increase the income, you increase the value. That's how commercial properties are appraised. So it's not like residential where it's based on what all the other properties in the neighborhood sold for. It's based on the income. So if you can raise the income at an apartment complex, you automatically raise the value in the marketplace. So our business plan with Fairview was pretty straightforward. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms, and we saw that the 3 and 4 bedrooms were significantly under market rent. So that was an easy value add strategy. We come in, we raise the rents up to market, and we're talking like $250, $300 under market rent. So that was, kind of step 1, raise the rents up to market. And then step 2 was, let's make all the units nicer. Let's make them modern, put in some vinyl plank flooring, the white cabinets, and spend a little money there. So that was step 2, was renovate the units, and we got about $100 per unit after doing that, $100 per month. And then step 3 was a lot of other smaller items, like we added some covered parking. We updated the office a little bit, although it's a small office, so that wasn't too big of a project. We're getting some new building signs in October, so that'll spruce up the property a little bit more. And we charge for pet rent. So before they had a pet rent policy, but weren't really enforcing it. And in today's market, it's about $25 per pet per month that you're able to charge. So that's another income source for us. And when we run the numbers, we take everything and model it for 5 years. So we model income growth, we model expense growth, we model the tax increase, because we know that the taxes are going to increase every 2 years. So we put that into our plan as well. And if at the end of the day it meets the returns for our investors, we say it's a property that's worth considering. So to talk numbers on this property, we paid $150,000 a door, which at the time, a year and a half ago, seemed really high. It's 100 units, so you can do the math and figure out the purchase price. By adding the value that we have now, our net operating income a year and a half ago was about $82,000 per month on average. So that's after all expenses are paid, but before the mortgage payment. Was $82,000 a month, and now it's about $100,000 a month in income. So it's a 22% increase in income, which corresponds to roughly a 20% increase in value. And we've also had cap rates working in our favor. So it's about a 5.5 cap rate on average right now. So we've been able to more than double our equity in the property by implementing our business plan. So, Adam said we raised $4 million. We have about $4 million or so additional equity in the property. So if we were to sell now minus closing costs, our investors in the deal would roughly, if they put in $50,000, they'd make $100,000 when we sold. So that's how apartment syndication works. Apartment investing works. Go ahead.
What's the IRR on this?
It depends when we sell, but around 18 to 20%. IRR. We'll list it with a broker. Do a competitive. So the question was, what's our exit strategy? We plan to hold for 3 to 5 years and then list it with a brokerage in town. Go through the competitive marketing process, which usually takes about 6 weeks. collect offers, and sell it with a 60-day close would be our optimal. Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about the remodel. People are curious. So these units were basically completely original when we bought the property. Sorry we don't have one of those to show you today. But you know, carpet, older doors, brass fixtures, flat cabinet fronts, and white appliances. So we came in and really redid just about everything. So you can see we did the vinyl plank flooring, which works really well in apartment communities, or fix and flips if you're on, doing a smaller scale property. They're super durable. You can replace one piece at a time. It's waterproof. So if you want like tenant indestructible flooring, this is the kind of flooring that you want. And then in the kitchen, we were able to save some money in the kitchen by only replacing the cabinet doors. So those boxes for all the cabinets are original from the 70s, but they were in really good shape in most of the units. So instead of spending several $1,000s for new cabinets, we were able to get just new cabinet doors for around $500.
And just painted the cabinets.
And then just painted the cabinets to match. We added the backsplash for a few $100s. The black appliance package is around $1,200 or so. And then, new doors everywhere, ceiling fans, light fixtures, more modern, gray paint on the walls. So this is our premium remodel for the property. And we're getting, it ranges from like $50 to $100 per unit in additional revenue for the upgraded units.
How did you decide how much to upgrade? Is it based on your competitors in the area?
It is. So we had discussions about, do we want to put in granite? Do we want to put in quartz? How much additional revenue would that get us? And so we did that for a few units to test it out, but people just didn't really want them that much. The demographics of this property is primarily, workforce housing, so families with jobs, paying the rent. It's blue collar workers. But we are kind of moving towards wanting to attract millennials. And, Mike can talk to that, but I think we get about 50% of the traffic now are millennials, and then 50% is workforce housing. So we wanted to make it, appeal to both groups.
What's the marketing strategy to attract millennials?
So we changed our outsourced marketing from Apartment Guide to Apartments.com. Apartments.com is more millennial based. They focused a lot of their research on the younger generation, what they look for on search platforms, and what they specifically do on the platform itself. There's an interactive map. You can go on this map and see what's around my development. Once we changed the marketing to Apartments.com, that brought in the younger renter to us. The foot traffic was much better. Sorry, the rates went up too. Yes, they did.
What was the other one you used before? You said
we used Apartment Guide prior, to apartments.com. And although they were great, we didn't get a lot of millennials from apartments or Apartment Guide.
And Michael does a ton of Craigslist posting as well. I think that's mostly the workforce demographic that uses that. But he posts every day and gets tons of traffic that way too.
Any Facebook advertising?
We do. We have a Facebook account for the property, and we do push out new information on the Facebook page as well.
And you set up electronic payment?
Yes, so our management software allows for paperless, basically. So you can electronically sign your lease with us, you can submit work orders, you can even text our leasing office as well.
Nice.
Appfolio?
Appfolio, yep.
Any other questions about the unit or property operations for Michael?
Would the tenants pay for utilities?
Oh yeah, so we do bill back utilities for the residents. We do it a flat fee. So 1 bedrooms have a different rate than the 2 bedrooms, for instance. And Michael can talk to what those amounts are or ask if that's.
So the 1 bedrooms, they pay $70, and that's for heat, water, sewage, and trash. The 2 bedrooms, it's $90 for the same thing, heat, water, sewage, and trash. And our townhomes are $75, and that's just specifically for trash, sewer, and water. Right now, with those utility allowances that we have in place, we are basically paying 100% of the utilities. That's being reimbursed back by the residents.
And that's another value add strategy. If there's a property that's the owner is paying all the utilities, which is rare in today's market, but if you find a property like that and change it over to where the tenants are paying their share of the utilities, that's another good value add strategy for buildings like this.
So you had to have 90% physical occupancy for 3 months prior to closing. And how's your occupancy growth since then?
We try to keep it right around 95%, and Michael does an awesome job at that. We've ranged between 95 and 98% for the last year and a half.
Are you trying to push the envelope on rents, or do you want to avoid being 100% occupied?
How would you answer that question, Michael?
Well, so if you're at 100%, then you're giving away the farm. That's how I was trained 15 years ago. So if you're running into a development that's at 100%, there's more money that can be made on that development.
Yeah, 95% is like the rule of thumb, where you're able to push rents, but you're not giving away the farm.
Exactly.
So, you're losing a little bit to vacancy, but more than offsets the additional rent you're able to collect.
And I do keep up with our competitors. A lot of our competitors in this marketplace are larger than us, and they have more amenities than we do here. So our pricing is a little bit lower than them, specifically for that reason. If I were to try to gain some of the higher rents that they're getting at these larger developments, they may struggle a little bit more. Because we don't have some of the amenities and the washer and dryers and the units, but we are very close to their market rates.
Yeah, so we price our units, $50 to $100 below what those other complexes are doing in the area, in order to keep getting that traffic and keep us at 95% occupied.
So this looks like a B-class area, maybe, and this is B-class property. Yes, is that your take on it?
I would say, 70s vintage is usually considered C-class, but because of the area and because of how well maintained the property is, it's more of a B-class property.
And are these other nearby competitors that have more amenities, would you also consider them B-class, or is there any A-class in here? Is there upward pressure?
There are some A-class properties, but we're not in direct competition with them. They're going to be a little bit closer to the mall. There's newer housing developments over there, and they're pushing for 2 bedrooms up to 18 to 2,000. But these are brand new units that came online within the last 2 to 3 years, and they're really not our competitors, so to speak. So we do have some properties that are in this vicinity that are A+ developments. Primarily, though, we're typically, if you look around us, we're all B average. Some of the larger players, they just have more units than us. They were built around the same time frame, but they just have more units than we have.
So if there's any other questions, let's hold those till we're back at the grassy area and let the second group come in and tour this. But yeah, keep thinking of your questions. We still have plenty of time to tour. So you're raising the capital for the deal while you're doing your due diligence on the property. So, usually you want to get through that first round of due diligence before you hold your webinar, before you get people, too involved in the deal. But once your due diligence is done, then you can start reaching out to people, holding the webinar, and raising the capital.
How long did you have between due diligence and closing?
Sorry, what was your question?
How long did you have between due diligence?
60 days. So the question was how long between when you go under contract and closing, and that's 60 days for most of these properties. The loans take a little longer to get approved, so just plan on 60 days.
Sir, to his point, I don't really understand. So on the passive investor side, how do you know how financially qualified these people are? Let's say one of them is pulling the last $50,000 out of a HELOC out of home. And then let's say a year later, you got a massive capital call for something, and that person can't add money that is needed. So how do you go through that?
So I would just suggest that as a passive investor looking at a deal, you want to make sure that the underwriting includes a few things. First and foremost, so that the sponsor never has to come out of pocket for money. You want the sponsor or the passive. The sponsor or the passive ever have to come out of. So the question was, how do you make sure that you're never going to get into a situation where you have a capital call? And a capital call is when the sponsor says, hey, we're short on money this month. Passive investors, we need you to pitch in some more money. And how you avoid that as a passive investor looking at deals, I would say you really want to analyze the underwriting. And the underwriting is just how the sponsors look at the income and expenses and project the returns. So I mentioned the concept of working capital. That's money that you raise up front that has no use at the time you raise it. It's just extra money that's a buffer for your property. So you want to make sure that your sponsors have a working capital budget, and that's roughly equal to 2 months of expenses and mortgage payment. Other things to look for that I think are common mistakes in underwriting are high enough vacancy term. Brokers will try to sell you with 5%. Really, you need more like 10 to 15% to account for all the vacancy, including, which includes leases that are not currently at market rate. And then the third thing would be the property tax increase. So for instance, in a 5-year hold period, our taxes are probably going to increase 2 times. I can't rely on the historical property tax amount when I'm projecting my financial returns. So there's ways that you can look at, what you're buying the property for and what the county mill levies and things are to get a good estimate on what the tax will be in the future. But, as far as avoiding a capital call, I'd say just really make sure you understand the business plan from up front, and know the team that's putting the deal together. Going back to somebody you know, like, and trust, and who has the competency to carry it all through.
How many doors did you go in passively before you bought this?
So I am in about 800 doors as a passive investor, 6 different deals, and I think before we did this one, I think we were in 3 deals. So we've invested passively in 3 deals before we bought this property and 3 deals after we bought this property.
So the down payment on this loan was 20%, right? So from passive and sponsors, what kind of percentage do you raise over and above the 20 for the working capital? Do you do 40?
It's deal specific. So the question was, how much money do you raise above the down payment? And it's just deal specific. You have to itemize it out for the down payment, the closing costs, working capital, and rehab budget. Yeah, go ahead.
What's been your biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge. Thankfully, there have not been that many. Trying to think. We had a few plumbing issues that got fixed. Michael, our property manager, handled all that.
I mean, fundraising.
Oh, from like this.
The whole.
The hardest part is when you first buy the property. So everything leading up to closing, and then probably 2 or 3 months after closing, it's long. Long hours, lots of phone calls, lots of emails. You're hurting. Hurting cats is the term, right? You have a lot of people involved in the deal. You have the title company. You have 2 different attorneys. You have the lender. You have the lender's legal team. You have your sponsor group. You have your investors. So just to give you a feel for all the people who are involved to make something like this happen. And you have to communicate with all of them to get to the closing table. And then after the closing table, for a property like this, we had a business plan that was to go renovate units. So we were, I can't tell you how many times I was at Home Depot and Floor and Decor, picking out finishes for the units, finding the best deals, talking to contractors, getting bids. So there's a lot of stuff going on those first few months.
I just want to highlight that, when you do that versus like a single family flip, you pick out all your finishes once, and then you got 100 remodels lined up.
Exactly.
So it's still active, but it's not the same as if I was flipping 100 houses.
Yeah. So his point is, when you have a property like this, you're doing that upfront work one time, and then you can implement it in all 100 units. So all that work with our team, picking out the finishes, getting multiple bids. We did that one time, and now Michael and Cirilio, our maintenance tech, they know exactly what they need to purchase for each time a unit comes offline and they need to renovate it. So now, my time involvement in the remodels is significantly less than when we were first putting them together.
Hey Sarah, talk about your management team a little bit. Again, how many people are in the active management team, and how did you divide the roles and responsibilities during the acquisition phase and thereafter? And are you the asset manager?
Sure. So the question is, how do we divide responsibilities between our 4 active partners in the deal? And the reason we set up our partnership the way we did is that we have 2 partners, Fred and Mike, who are based out of Dallas, and they had done 10 syndications before we bought this property together. So they were bringing their experience to the team and their net worth and everything else. And Alex and I, my husband, we were bringing the local knowledge, expertise, the broker relationships, and the boots on the ground ability to get here within half an hour, check in on the property, and make sure things were going smoothly. So that's how we set up. That's why our partnership worked so well. And how we divided up responsibilities were, I was primarily the lender and legal liaison, so I would deal with the attorneys, the lender, things like that. My partner Mike, he did the PPM preparation and worked with getting the PPM and business plan put together. And then, our other 2 partners would fill in as needed with making investor calls, making webinar charts, and everything else. So, it's all just people's strengths and what they most enjoy doing, I would say, is how to divide the work.
And so how active are everybody on that management team now?
So we're all asset managers. Yeah, so all 4 of us are asset managers. We talk to the property management team every week, refining our business plan, addressing any issues that come up. And I'm here locally, so I do more than that as well, but yeah, we're all 4 of the asset managers. Sure.
What about you? I'm sorry, Phil.
I'm going to say, if you guys decided to want to keep it long term, do you have a buyout agreement for the 50 limited partners? You just say you cash out, here you go.
The question is, do we have a buyout agreement? I believe it's in the PPM that we could do that, but we're not planning anything like that.
Attention.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think it's in there? Okay. Would you know what the terms are in there? Or
I
I'm
couldn't
more of
tell
a
you.
buy and
I couldn't
hold.
tell you off the
More
top
of
of
a buy
my
and
head.
hold,
Sorry.
Forever guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So, I just want to ask you guys: does everybody understand what syndication is at this point? How the process works? I know there's lots of detail and probably a lot more I could go into, but I heard a good quote a week ago at a conference I was at that syndication is passive investors leveraging the sponsorship's talents. So passives leverage the sponsor's talents, sponsors leverage the passive money, and by doing that, everybody benefits mutually in the arrangement. So I don't know about you, but it's really hard finding a deal. So that's why I invest passively too. I can diversify, go into other markets, and free up some of my time for what I like doing, which is search in Colorado for a next apartment deal.
Sarah, is there a formula for too many passive investors based on the unit size, or
the question is there a formula for too many passive investors? No, not really. But for a larger deal, you'll want to have a higher minimum investment from the passive investors, just so you don't have, I would say you want less than 100 investors. Yeah. Would be a rule of thumb. But,
so the passive investors on this one are 50 or?
Yeah, 50 and 75 are what most people are in that.
You were talking about the general partnership earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and you were talking about how there's 4 GPs, but you also mentioned that you need a key principal, people to sign on the loan with net worth. Can you explain how that looks in the syndication and what role they play now?
Sure. So Adam's question is, explain what the role of the key principals are in getting the loan. And the key principals are a little bit different than the general partners. They can be additional people that come into the deal to help qualify for the loan, but they don't actively participate in the management of the deal. So we have our 4 sponsors who actively manage the deal, and then another 5 or so key principals. We didn't necessarily have to have that many, but everybody wanted to be in on it. So we have another 5 key principals that helped us meet our loan requirements for net worth and liquidity is what the lenders look at for the buying group.
The pool. And then we'll do the pool. That sounds good. That sounds really good. All right. Who has the first question? Who wants to break the ice with Sarah?
I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. I don't want to sound like, that she wouldn't know. Yeah, that she wouldn't know what she was talking about. She's experienced with the multifamily. But you were going over the renovations. You had a lot of kind of little nitty-gritty kind of things like aerator, plumbings, things like that.
Yes.
Like, how do you know to do things like that? Or, like, what do you have, like, a part of your team that's better with things like that? Or
I do the research.
Okay.
So this question was, how do we find out about programs like, I know I talked to one group about it, but we did water efficiency. So we added aerators to all the faucets. We got new shower heads in there, and we got it for free through, I believe it was actually Excel Energy who did that for us. And they were more than happy to come out and give us, thousands of dollars worth of equipment for free because they knew that we would have less water, which requires less heating, which ultimately helps their bottom line. That's my interpretation of it anyways. We also did a energy audit. So we had Excel Energy come out and bring their auditors to tell us where we could improve our energy savings. So they looked at our boiler rooms, they looked at all of our light fixtures, and they were able to, tell us what we should do to improve our electric bill. And they came out and replaced all the incandescent bulbs on the whole property, all 100 units, with nice LED bulbs, $8 a piece or something, for free. Zero cost to us as the property owner. And that results in lower utility bills for us, lower utilities bills for our tenants, and just a win-win all around. So if you are a property owner currently, there's different programs for residential and multifamily, but typically you can get help from the water company or Excel Energy to do things like that around any properties you own. All right.
Your passive investors, how did you go about finding them?
Yeah, so our passive investors primarily came from a large investor group that my husband and I joined in Dallas. There's a group out there that everyone either wants to be a passive investor or wants to be a deal sponsor. And, a lot of our capital came from that group, some friends and family. And I'll just walk you through the process that we use to raise the money. So we have, I call it an investor database, if you will. It's just our contact management system of everybody who's expressed interest in investing in one of our deals. And when we found this property, we sent out an email to everyone on our list, letting them know the rough details of the property, what it looked like, how large it was, and what financial returns they could expect as a passive investor. The people who were interested, we invited them to a webinar, also via email. And our team put together an hour-long webinar with half an hour of Q&A for people to watch the whole business plan, look at the financial returns, and then ask their questions at the end. After that process, our PPM went out. That just stands for Private Placement Memorandum. That's the document that passive investors use to sign up to be an owner in the deal, to invest in the deal. So they got that document sent to them after they expressed their interest. And then they had about 2 to 4 weeks, 4 weeks if they were procrastinating, to fill out the paperwork, wire the funds to the escrow account that then we were using to close on the deal and finance the purchase. And that's really it. As a passive investor, it is a long document that you have to review when you first sign up. You can get your attorney to review it if you want. Most people, are able to review it on their own. And that just spells out the terms of the deal. So that spells out that 80-20 split that we talked about, talks about voting rights of the members, lots of legal jargon. But ultimately, as a passive investor, once you send in that paperwork, you are in the deal, you're owning part of the LLC, which owns the property, and you'll get any profits split up according to your ownership share. So as a passive investor, you really don't have to do much after that initial signing up into the deal. Our team, we do monthly communications. Other sponsors might do quarterly communications. And what we send to our passive investors each and every month is an executive summary talking about the projects that we're currently working on, as well as our net operating income, where we are according to plan. So we actually match up our current performance with what we told you we were going to do at the webinar. And then we send the property management reports. So those are usually 100+ page reports that have balance sheet, income statement, cash flow statement, and send that out to all of our investors. So essentially, if you were to invest in a deal as a passive investor, that's what you would see. You would see the PPM, you would get monthly emails from the sponsorship team, and you would get those financials detailing how the property is performing. And a dividend check every quarter. Yeah.
Is that what it is every quarter?
We do every quarter for distribution. Right, Adam.
The original webinar that you did, that was 1 hour.
Yes.
And 30 minutes of it was Q&A. About the first 30, you started off with something?
We had a full offering memorandum, if you want to call it that, where we walked through all the details of the property and our business plan. We talked about the financial analysis in depth. And then had an additional 30 minutes for investors to ask us questions. So it was an hour and a half, call it. And then after that, that does not end the conversation there, right? So we have one-on-one phone calls, email exchanges, as much information as people need. Like, we're there to answer questions.
Going into that webinar, what was your team's plan of what are the talking points, the most important things to share with the passive investors?
Big things are the market. A lot of our investors are not local. So talking about the Denver market, the strength of it, the appreciation rates historically, population growth. We also talk about demographic trends in this specific area. So we pulled the demographic report, tell you what the average household income is, and 1 mile radius, 3 mile radius, things like that. But then mostly what people are really interested in is the value add business plan, how much money they're going to make at the end of the day, and how long you're going to hold the property before you sell.
So during that conversation, did you spell out your commitment or their expectations as far as the return on investment quarterly, and then also how long you intend to hold it for?
Yeah, we spell all that out in the webinar or one-on-one phone call. So for this property, we said we had a 5-year business plan. We'd sell as early as 3 years if we were overachieving on our business plan, but basically told the investors to expect 5 years before they would get paid out on the back end. We are projecting over 10% returns and over 100%, so doubling their money in that 5-year period. And that we're looking for a deal similar to this now. The market's even a little tighter, so it's more like 80% returns over 5 years with 8% cash flow on average. But still, where are you going to get that anywhere else?
Now, are you required in terms of the 5 years? Is there like a limit you need to sell by X amount?
Conversations about selling, that's something where we'd like to get all the investors involved, passive investors, general partners, everybody involved, and our team would then present the options. So we could either sell, refinance, or hold it, and walk through all those options, and then have a informal vote among members to decide if it does make sense to sell early.
All of that being passive, but if you wanted to be an active investor, what were the requirements you were looking for such an individual? And also on an ongoing basis, what is their time commitment for that?
As an active investor,
yes.
so as a syndicator sponsor who's putting together the deal, it really is a business. It's not a passive investment. And that's just what I would tell people who want to get into the industry of syndicating deals, is it's a business. So you can expect to work somewhat business hours to do everything. Our criteria is, we want properties where even after the sponsors are compensated, we'll return 80%. So 180% total return to investors after 5 years. The market's been so hot lately. I mean, you probably could sell in 2 years, for instance, but that's what we look for. We also like stabilized properties that are cash flowing from day one. We want to see at least 8% cash flow to our passive investors. And if the deal doesn't meet those criteria, we pass them.
Actually, not the criteria for an active investor. What are you looking for? People who have experience in the field when you set something like that up? I would assume you are, financial background, that sort of thing, for the active investors, for the people.
General partners.
Exactly.
Yeah. So so the question is, I'll summarize. How do you form your team of people who are the active investors? And everything is a team sport in this industry. So if I was to look for a business partner who wanted to sponsor deals with me, I would say, okay, what's your experience in real estate? Do they have a background? Do they also have the financial backing to help with the loan requirements of being a key principal on the loan and signing on the loan docs? Easy way of thinking of it: do I know, like, and trust the person, and are they competent? And once you have those things, it might make a really good partnership. So,
I asked the cap. Maybe you covered it. I came a little late, but the cap rate when you bought it versus what you think would be roughly right now.
Sure. So we bought it above a 6 cap. Call it, low to mid 6 cap, and if we were to sell today, we'd sell it for around a 5.5 cap. So values have been cap rates go down, meaning values have been going up.
Fantastic.
You have that question.
Oh, sorry.
Going back to your communications with the passive investors, could you talk a little bit about the timing of that? Are you already under contract when you do that?
Yes.
How does that work?
Yeah. So the question is, what's the timing when you talk to passive investors? And I would say you first reach out to them once you have a signed letter of intent. That's the precursor to an official signed contract on the property, to gauge interest. And all right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming out. Hope you learned a thing or two. Feel free to talk to me afterwards if you want to talk any other specifics. But yeah, had a great time hosting. Thank you to Adam again and team Blue Spruce. Yeah, get a hold of me. My company is Regency Investment Group. You can look us up, regencyinvestmentgroup.com, or my name's Sarah. You can contact me through the website. So thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. And help yourself to more food if there's anything left.
Yep. Don't let us keep it after you missed one. If anyone didn't get one and you want one, just they're right here.